Hello and welcome to iCatholic. I'm Wendy Grace. Well, Lent has begun, and thankfully one of the things that is synonymous with Lent here in Ireland is our generosity in how we give to those who are in need. And one of those ways is through the Trócaire box. It's something that hopefully is a feature in most households on the whole table, and that the box will be filled to help those in need. And joined with me to tell us about this year's campaign and the focus and how you can get involved and how you can help, I have CEO of Trócaire, Caoimhe de Barra. Caoimhe, thanks for joining us today.
My pleasure to be here, thank you.
So tell us a little bit about the focus of the Lent campaign this year.
So the focus of the Lenten campaign this year is Somalia. So as people may be aware, there's been a terrible drought in the Horn in East Africa for the past several years. And Somalia is one of the countries that is worst affected by the drought. In effect, they were due to have 5 rainy seasons, none of which have happened in the last 2.5 years. So you have 6.7 million people in Somalia, almost half the population, in desperate need of food and food assistance. Trócaire works in southern Somalia in a region called Gedo, which is about the size of the island of Ireland, and we provide all of the healthcare in that region. So all of the pregnant women, babies, small children with malnutrition come to us, even at the best of times, because poverty rates are very high. But at the moment we are seeing 10s, 20s, almost hundreds of thousands of people coming from areas in remote south central Somalia to the health clinics and the hospitals that we run in search of food, and in particular medical care for small children who are so vulnerable to malnutrition. So our Lenten campaign this year is focusing on Somalia, and focusing not just on, one family there and their story, but on the fact that it's climate change is the driver of this terrible drought.
That's the reason there's been drought after drought, yeah.
That's right. And while this is an arid area, it's not unusual for it to be dry, but it is highly unusual. In fact, we haven't had a drought like this in Somalia for up to 7 years. Almost 6 consecutive failed rainy seasons. And of course, Somalia and the people of Somalia have done so little to cause climate change, but are suffering the very worst from it. Over 1.1 million children are at severe risk of malnutrition. So the services that we provide in hospitals and clinics in terms of providing therapeutic food and medical care to babies and small children is absolutely essential and life-saving.
So Caoimhe, there are almost 2 messages here. One, the practical support, but also, sadly, the disproportionate impact that some of our actions in the West might have on countries like Somalia in terms of how we think about, just our day-to-day actions and looking after the planet.
Yes, that is precisely it. And, we need every cent that we can raise in order to be able to respond to people in Somalia and in the other 19 countries that we work in. But the reality is that we shoulder a huge volume of the responsibility for creating climate change. So really, through our actions this Lent, whether it's donations into the Trócaire box, but also the actions that we take to reduce our impact on emissions, all of these are extremely important in terms of ensuring that people in countries that have many human resources but fewer financial resources perhaps, and resources, they cannot protect their own people from the impact of climate. So we have to advocate and campaign on climate issues, much as we, hopefully people will be able to support Trócaire to enable us to provide that life-saving assistance to small children, to pregnant and lactating mothers, and to families affected by the crisis in Somalia.
And Caoimhe, when people hear some of the facts and the statistics that you're giving us on what's happening in Somalia, it can be actually quite overwhelming, where you get that feeling, oh gosh, can I really make a difference? How far does, the Irish euro go in a place like Somalia?
Oh, it goes very, very far. So, you can certainly ensure that a family has food for a month with a donation for as little as 25 or 30 euro. You can provide therapeutic food for a month for a small child for a similar sum. So the sums are not huge, and they go a long way, and they make a huge difference. The other thing that Trócaire does, of course, is we don't just respond to humanitarian emergencies. And there have been droughts in the past, and people who were displaced by droughts in the past and who have ended up living near the hospitals and clinics we run now have children in schools that are supported by Trócaire. So those children are getting an education, which means that their future hopefully should be a lot brighter than their parents who had to leave home. Also, we support women in particular to grow vegetable and fodder for cattle, which they can sell. So we're trying to break the cycle of poverty and doing it in a way which is responding to the climate crisis, but ensuring that people who are affected by climate and affected by poverty in Somalia will have a long-term pathway out of that poverty.
One of the things that I think that a lot of parents in particular really like about the Trócaire box is it's a great opportunity for us to be able to try and explain to our children about, well, the blessings that they have, but how we can help others. And you do that in a way by telling the story of one family. So tell us a little bit about Natasha's family.
Delighted to talk about Nasteha and her family, and I met this family just a few months ago, and unfortunately their story is very, very common. So Nasteha's parents moved, they had to walk for days and days from their home place, their home farm, to Luke, which is one of the areas where we work, and they left because all of their cattle had died. Most people in Somalia are pastoralists, so livestock is their living. And when the herds died as a result of the drought, they had nothing left, absolutely nothing left. So they were afraid of dying of hunger in their home place, so they walked for days. And unfortunately, while they were walking to Luke, one of their children died and had to be buried by the roadside. Very, very sad, but unfortunately this is incredibly common. So they're now living in a camp outside Luke where they are being looked after, where Trócaire is supporting them in terms of accessing basic food and basic health services. And hopefully the drought will end and we'll be able to support them to resettle and certainly to get the children into school and to break the cycle of poverty through education. But Nasteha is this lovely young girl, very bright, very vibrant, and even in the midst of a terrible situation, very playful and very keen to engage with other children and with everyone around her. So their story is extremely sad, but they're also very resilient in the face of what they have gone through and determined to make a better life for their entire family.
Okay, well, thank you so much for sharing with us on the Lenten campaign this year. Please God, the funds that are raised here in Ireland, and Irish people are so generous, will make a big difference to the lives of many in Somalia.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us on iCatholic today. And the next step is to make sure that you have the Trócaire box, of course, in your house and to fill it. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks so much for joining us on iCatholic today. Please make sure that you like and subscribe to our YouTube channel.